May 15th, 2026. The skies above Finland literally grind to a standstill. Welcome to this explainer where we're going to untangle the invisible forces behind this massive disruption. It's a wild story that weaves together stray weapons, manipulated atomic clocks, and a whole new era of invisible conflict that we found in our source material. Let's dive right in.
So, here is the huge mystery we've got to solve today. Why on earth are Ukrainian drones suddenly triggering major emergency alerts over in Finland? We need to figure out how weapons meant for a completely different battlefield, hundreds of miles away, are inexplicably shutting down the capital of a newly minted NATO ally. Section 1. The Helsinki Drone Alert. When the sky stops. Think about this number for a second. 1.8 million. That's how many residents in southern Finland were suddenly advised to just stay indoors that morning. At the exact same time, the Helsinki-Vantaa airport completely suspended all operations for 3 hours. And all of this absolute paralysis, it was caused by a single, stray drone detected near the vital Neste oil refinery in Porvoo. Imagine an entire capital region just holding its breath over one little dot on a radar screen. Now, as you can see from the timeline here, this morning's massive scare wasn't just some random isolated glitch. It's actually the climax of an escalating pattern of incursions over the past few months. Look at this progression. Back on March 29th, Ukrainian N-196 drones crash near Kouvola. Then, May 3rd, another drone drifts through Virolahti airspace. And that brings us to the big May 15th Helsinki emergency alert. We are absolutely looking at a clear, mounting surge here. So, how are they getting there? The absolutely crucial point to understand here, and the data backs this up, is that Ukraine is not targeting Finland. Their actual targets are Russian oil infrastructure right on the Baltic Sea, places like Ust-Luga and Primorsk. To hit those, these long-range An-196 drones fly incredibly low, right under the radar. But things go sideways because they are getting dangerously swept up in Russia's invisible defensive shield. Russian electronic warfare basically knocks them completely off course, sending them drifting blindly right into NATO territory.
Section 2. The Digital Mirage. How an invisible shield rewrites reality.
To understand how a drone gets yanked off course, we need to look at two very different types of interference. On the left, you've got brute force jamming. This is essentially just a giant wall of static noise. It floods the frequencies, totally overwhelming the drone so it flies completely blind, relying only on its internal gyroscopes, and it just drifts off course. But on the right, well, that's the real culprit here. GPS spoofing. This isn't just blocking a signal, it's a sophisticated digital mirage. It actually broadcasts a fake, stronger signal to deliberately trick the drone's autopilot. It basically says, hey, you're over here, forcing the drone to correct its path, effectively tugging it on an invisible leash straight into neutral territory.
Experts call this process the cyberkinetic loop. Picture a drone flying at, say, 150 to 200 kilometers per hour through the narrow Gulf of Finland, using a tactic called meakening, which is basically just capturing and rebroadcasting delayed GPS signals. The drone's Linux flight computer gets completely manipulated. It triggers what are known as state estimation errors. Put simply, the software gets hijacked and is forced into trusting the spoofed, fake data over its own actual physical sensors.
Before we move on, it's really vital we clearly separate these concepts. An electronic warfare jammer, like Russia's Krasuka system, acts a lot like a digital hammer. It blocks or diverts your location data, and it'll absolutely drop your cell connection, but it cannot listen to your phone calls or spy on your browsing history. Cyber espionage, on the other hand, is a totally different beast. Groups like APT28 actively attempt to steal your data by hacking routers or hijacking DNS. So while EW is causing all this physical chaos in the skies, it's not actually reading your private text messages.
Section 3. The clock problem. The hidden vulnerability of modern infrastructure. Okay, this fact is pretty mind-blowing. 1 microsecond equals 300 meters. See, navigation systems calculate your exact position based on the ultra-precise time of flight of light-speed signals from space. In this world, time literally is location. So manipulating that space clock by just 1/1,000,000th of a second, just a single microsecond, throws your physical positioning off by a whopping 300 meters. And that tiny fraction of a second builds to a pretty terrifying reality for Finland's whole digital economy. If you successfully spoof the GPS clock, you can trigger a massive, cascading chain reaction. Step 1, telecommunications. Clock drift causes 5G towers to fall out of sync with each other, leading to massive, widespread dropped calls. Step 2, the power grid.
The devices monitoring the 50 Hz grid rely heavily on exact timestamps. If those get spoofed, they report phantom instability, which can actually trigger automatic localized blackouts. And step 3, financial markets. High-frequency trading entirely relies on exact legal timestamps to function. If those timestamps fail, you literally have to freeze the Helsinki Stock Exchange just to prevent total financial chaos. So how do you defend against this so-called leap-second vulnerability? While the Finnish Geospatial Research Institute is fighting back hard. First, they're performing 24/7 signal quality analysis. They're also employing multi-constellation receivers, which is a fancy way of saying they cross-check the European, American, and Chinese satellites all at the exact same time to spot any anomalies. And, incredibly, they are actually installing localized physical cesium and rubidium atomic backup clocks at critical sites across the country just so they don't have to rely entirely on those vulnerable signals coming from space.
Section 4. Gray zone warfare tactics exhaust, confuse, and paralyze.
According to the sources, we're looking at a textbook definition of gray zone warfare. This is a type of conflict specifically designed to exhaust, confuse, and paralyze an adversary, all without ever firing a single shot that would actually trigger a full-scale military response or invoke NATO's Article 5. The reports indicate that Russia is utilizing these exact tactics to inflict serious structural and psychological damage, all while maintaining complete plausible deniability. You might have heard of this concept. It's often called salami slicing or the boiling frog theory. It's a geopolitical tactic where you cut an adversary's security into tiny, minor slices. No single slice, like a randomly dropped cell signal or an airport closing for just a few hours, is worth actually going to war over. But eventually, slice by slice, the whole sausage is gone. The idea is to normalize the completely abnormal. Making daily GPS outages and weekly scrambled jets feel like everyday occurrences is a highly deliberate tactic to lower Finland's guard over time. When you look at the reports detailing the Kremlin's playbook, the strategy is pretty stark. By forcing Finland to spend tens of thousands of euros just to scramble F-35 fighter jets to chase down a cheap, spoofed signal, Russia aims to cause massive resource exhaustion. Along the way, they map out Finland's emergency response backup protocols. They want to make the Finnish public start questioning the high costs of their new alliances, slowly undermining trust in the government. And they get to create deniable sabotage. Oops, that was a Ukrainian drone, definitely not us, all to normalize this relentless daily interference. But you might be asking, why is Finland the main target of all this intense focus right now? Well, the sources point out a few massive reasons. First, Finland shares a huge 1,340-kilometer border with Russia. Second, they've recently committed over 3.2 billion euros in military aid to Ukraine. And then there's the 2023 NATO backstab narrative. Moscow views Finland shedding its historical neutrality as a deep betrayal. All of this combined makes Finland what analysts are calling the prime testing laboratory for electronic warfare and instrumentalized migration. It basically allows Moscow to exact a form of daily punishment. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, slightly unsettling thought. Does all of this change how you view those minor, everyday inconveniences? The next time your Maps app suddenly glitches out, or your cell service mysteriously vanishes, or a flight is inexplicably delayed, ask yourself, are you just experiencing a routine software bug, or are you actually witnessing the invisible front lines of a silent war? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.